We will go ahead and get started then. So my name is Cassie Reeder, and I am accompanied by lots of people here, but my co-host is Catherine. So I will let her start with her introduction, and then I will go from there.
Yes, thank you, Cassie. So my name is Catherine Goyette, and I am an educational technology consultant here in Central California. And I'm so excited to be here with some great panelists from all over that are going to introduce themselves in a moment. And we're going to be talking about training teachers in schools, why that's important, some strategies for that, and so it's going to be a great time. We're really honored to have everyone here with us. Cassie, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we will have the panelists introduce themselves as well.
All right, so my name is Cassie Reeder, and I never really know what to say about myself, but so I was an educator for 5 years, and then I was an education consultant for Promethean for 2, and I'm now an independent consultant. And in my time as a consultant now, as well as during my time with Promethean, teacher training is kind of one of the areas that I like to really focus in on. So I'm really excited to be here with all of you guys. And as also one of the sort of organizers of this event, I just wanted to thank all of you guys for coming out and for being a part of this day, because it's been really incredible, and we are in our last hour, so they saved the best for last, right guys? So I will let you guys go. I guess I'll kind of just start with Sandra, because she's beside me on my screen, and then we can go from there.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Sandra Ortua. I'm an English teacher and a teacher trainer. I hold a master's degree in didactic for self-directed learning and a teacher certificate from Anaheim University. I work as an English teacher at school, and I work as a teacher trainer at Universidad de Córdoba in Colombia. Also, I work as a trainer, as a volunteer trainer with the Microsoft Education community. I can tell you that I became a Microsoft Innovator Expert in 2016, and then in 2017, I became a Microsoft Educator Trainer. So I've been doing volunteering, teacher training, and those activities.
Excellent, thank you. Let's move on to, I see Jared on my screen. Could you introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Jared Borman. I am an instructional technology consultant with an area education agency located here in the state of Iowa. I'm the author of Professionally Driven, and recently signed a contract with Disrupted TV to host a Disrupted PD channel within their network. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity, but my passion ultimately lies in empowering educators and adult learners, and I'm always seeking to gain more information, more insight on that. So looking forward to having a conversation with everyone.
Awesome, thanks so much. How about Nancy?
Hi, everyone. I'm Nancy White. I'm in Colorado Springs, retired a year ago after 20 years in a school district here. My last job was as a 21st century learning and innovation specialist. I am now doing that as an independent consultant. Also serve on the board for Colorado ASCD, our local affiliate. So I am have been tasked with professional development in many different roles over the last 16 years or so.
Awesome, thank you. Glad you're here as well. Ian, let's hear from you.
Hello from Scotland. Hence, I'm having a whiskey. It's Saturday night here.
Cool.
So it's yeah. So I've been educator. I was an engineer first of all, then became an educator at various levels. I've also worked for the district, the local authority, and I've also worked nationally for Scotland. developing how technology should be used for education or could be used for education, creating a platform for educators right across the country, every pupil, every teacher, onto the same platform that's an authentication system, into loads of different tools. MIE fellow, school I was in was on an island 2 hours off the mainland, which was actually had 9 distilleries on the island. It was tough to leave. And I'm sitting in Edinburgh at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night talking about education. I must like it.
I love it. Thank you. And thank you to all of you for spending time. Obviously, we're all a group that's passionate about what we do and in training teachers. So thank you for joining us. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right? So yeah. Excellent. Awesome. And then Sarah joining us. Can you introduce yourself quickly as well? Oh, Sarah, I'm not able to hear you.
She's not muted, so maybe what she could do is just log out and log back in.
How about this? Is that better?
Perfect. Perfect.
Yay, okay, good. Sorry, it is 40-mile-an-hour gusting wind outside in Indiana, so we had a bit of technical difficulty. So my name's Sarah Margison. I am located in central Indiana. I am currently a coordinator of Connected Learning for Tippecanoe School Corporation in Lafayette, Indiana, which is the surrounding school corporation for Purdue University. And my main job is teacher training. That's what I get to do every day. And I get to work with teachers and I get to work with students. And I recently graduated from Purdue with a master's in instructional design. So a focus in online learning and mostly training and HR kind of stuff.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. We have quite a diverse group here, a lot of different platforms that, technology platforms that people specialize in and different parts of the world. So it's going to be a great chat. I'm excited. Our first question really starts with the why we're even here in the first place. And so what I want to ask the panel is, why is it important to train teachers who are working in classrooms? Why is this even, why do we have a job in essence? Why is this something that we need to keep doing? So if there's anyone that wants to jump in, we'll go ahead and start with that.
I'll start, I guess. I think that we all know that what we learned in teacher education is not quite the way school and learning works today. In the age of technology, it has just totally shifted what we're able to do and how kids want to learn. They're wired differently. And so for people who have been out of school, and I'm not quite sure that our teacher education programs have caught up to the world of technology and what they're teaching even now. So we need to provide the skills, and not just the skills, a vision of what this can be and how we can transform learning to better prepare our kids for their future.
Well said. I like that your answer focuses not just on teachers, but that it has to do with the students, and that we're doing this. We're training teachers for the sake of the students. Excellent. Anyone else want to jump in and talk about your why? Why do we need to train teachers?
Yeah, can I just jump in there? That's a very clearly stated teacher education rather than training, and I think that's a really important point. It's not just that one-off hit of a course. It's embedding it within pedagogy, so it allows the choices, the professionalism to develop continuously, and that's the key. I think training has this hint of you being the classroom student when you sit down and you respond like a monkey to the instructions, but actually we need the professionals to be making those judgments of what works for them in what certain ways, and I know that's been a theme right throughout all today.
Excellent.
I can piggyback off of Ian there. And I like what he was hinting towards, and that was the idea of educators building the intrinsic motivation within adult learners to want to learn more, to become master learners themselves, so that way they can in turn teach kids how to be learners and not just take in information for a one-time deal, but to be able to do something with that learning. And I think that's really important when developing any kind of adult learning environment, is making sure that there is some of that autonomy. And I shouldn't say some, but a good chunk of that is autonomy on the educator's part, because I hear over and over and over again from current level educators that they don't feel like professionals. They don't feel like they're being heard as a classroom educator. And so building in that autonomy, I feel, is a very, very important part of it, and really does help them to understand that I can make my pedagogy and my instruction better. And it's okay to know where I am right now. And I've been doing that for so long, not that it hasn't worked, but there are strategies now that could potentially work better. And having them go and seek those is important, rather than what I've been a part of as far as training goes. We're going to sit everybody down and do the same training with everybody, but in turn, only 1 or 2 people are going to walk away with something that they needed in the first place. So
I love that point. I like that you talk about intrinsic motivation and autonomy. It reminds me of Daniel Pink's work about how teachers need to have purpose, and their purpose, not ours that we give them, right? Autonomy and mastery, and that's where we come in with the training. Excellent. Well said. Does anyone else want to share their why? Go ahead, please.
Okay. Well, I think that we should work on teaching, training teachers, is because there's a way to help them, to keep them updated in the last trends and tendencies in emerging pedagogies. Also, I think there's a way to renew and refresh their classroom practices. And especially for me, those spaces are a way to have opportunity to share a successful teaching experience that teachers maybe have been carried out, in different teaching contexts. So when we set the spaces for training teachers, that's an opportunity to share. It's an opportunity to listen to them. It's an opportunity to know what they do with their students. So it's extremely important to keep working, to keep continuing on teacher trainers. It's always a way to keep them renewed, to refresh, to become part of the traditional class. So when we train teachers, they always have the opportunity to be heard and to express, to share what they do. So that's extremely important to keep doing this, training teachers.
Jump in with something, or? Okay, so actually based off of Sandra and Jared, your responses, it ties right into our next question, which is, so taking that idea of, personalization, how do you personalize a training opportunity or experience? How do you personalize the learning experience in the trainings or the, teachings that you're doing to meet the needs of the teachers? And keeping in mind that they would have varying levels of proficiency in whatever you're training them on.
I'll start. I think for me, going in with faculty, with a whole group is fine for the beginning, but then following up with individualized meetings with those teachers and really building that relationship. That's where I find it's really hard. I work in 19 different buildings, and so it's hard really to get in and work with every level of teacher. But I think if you can get your foot in the door at the beginning and then build those relationships after, really spend time with teachers, I think they appreciate that. And it's the same thing with their students. Their students respond well to them building that relationship and taking an interest in. I know you're not at, X level, but let me help you get there. Or what goals do you have for your classroom? Let me personalize this a little bit for you. Something that I may have introduced at the beginning, but how can I come back and bring out, your needs from that training?
I'd like to piggyback on Sarah there. We used to do a lot of that whole sit and get face-to-face professional development that was really largely ineffective. There wasn't a lot of follow-up. There was no opportunity to build relationships. And so for my last 2 years in my school district, I started something called personalized professional learning. And essentially, I became a peer mentor or coach to any teachers. My goal was to meet them where they were. They would sign up, and together through some cognitive coaching and design thinking, we would help them write goals and then kind of come up with an action plan that was doable, get it all aligned with things they were trying to achieve in their schools. And then I was able to use some money from a grant to provide subs. I could identify teachers doing the things that they were wanting to do and give them opportunities to see it in action, and then do kind of that just-in-time training if it's a technology tool that they needed to learn, or if they needed to learn a strategy like how to get questioning going in schools. It wasn't necessarily focused on technology, but technology always was the enabler. So it was very, very personal. Everybody came away with something different, yet we did come together and we were a network of learners together.
I think that idea of network of learners, where you work as a peer coach with each other, you talk things through, becomes really important. I'm a bit of a fan of design thinking, but also of situational leadership, Blanchard's situational leadership, which talks about the 4 zones of the bike analogy, you know, so you need to be very directed, very focused on when someone's first starting. It is, have a look at this video, this is how it works, this is how you could use it, and working through those cycles till eventually the person becomes independent. And halfway through it, you're having conversations about, so where does this work? How could this help your students? And it's a shift of relationship throughout that time. It's not a fixed relationship. It moves and constantly evolves and change, or should move and constantly evolve and change. Doesn't always, but it should do that.
In terms of, and I kind of go the other way around with that sometimes, because I always get the question from educators, hey, what cool new tech tools do you know? And my immediate question back to them is, well, what cool new teaching strategies are you trying? Because I always start my conversations with any educator around the idea of pedagogy first. And then when I can see tools to go in there to actually sustain higher order thinking longer and for, to maintain it for a longer duration of time during the class period, but then of course, over the course of time for that week, that month, that semester, that quarter, whatever it may be, that's when they start to see, when they actually start to see the connection between pedagogy and technology. Because if they're thinking about their classroom instruction first, and then I can drop in nuggets of tech, they're more inclined to be like, oh, tell me more about that. How do I do this again? And now we're like in a mini moment, kind of what Nancy was describing, that mini moment of in real-time training with a singular person or a small group of people versus a large group. And I always love the small group atmosphere when in terms of talking about any piece of technology in order to integrate it into the pedagogy itself, because I know those 5-6 people, they saw the pedagogical need, and we can actually have good conversations with around that.
I'm going to jump in real quick and just say that in my experiences as a trainer, it's also been more beneficial in that small group setting, because it makes teachers feel more comfortable to share when there's like 4 or 5 people, as opposed to, you know, like a whole classroom full of 30 people, because they might be intimidated or, you know, something like that. But when there's a smaller group, they're more likely to ask the questions that they actually want to get answers to help them to continue to develop in whatever level they're at. So.
All right, excellent. I love those answers. We have a lot of, I heard a lot about coaching, which I love. I'm a huge fan of coaching rather than sit and get PD. So I'm glad to hear that that resonates with many of you as well. Our next question is about building, culture is huge. And so the question is, how do you build a culture of risk-taking, and why is this important in training teachers?
I'll just jump in there. Culture, the journey starts of where you are. If you're in a a very old traditional school, that'll be a very different dialogue that you have compared to a school which is new start or has new staff who are looking to learn and change and set up that vision. So there will be a multitude of answers here, and there should be a multitude of answers here. It's not a simple or single thing that happens. And it actually links back to what we were talking about previously, making it individualized, personalized, identifying the pedagogical drivers. What are you trying to achieve? Why are you trying to achieve that? Is the best piece of technology maybe a pencil and paper? Is that the best technology you can grab at the time? And making it appropriate to what they're trying to achieve, and making them realize that actually they have skills already. Because sometimes they arrive with the mentality of, oh, I can't use computers, technology is really bad for me. And I go, what technology? What are you talking about here? Because technology is from paper and pencil right through to computers. So what are you actually trying to do? What is the technology? And once they realize that their professionalism becomes part of that conversation, they are empowered. And you see it growing. They are empowered. So long as they actually arrive at any form of lifelong learning process that they're there, as long as they're having that conversation already, if they're not even starting that point, that's a challenge. How do you get them even starting?
So I'll jump in because this question, that's my jam. That's my that's right up my alley with what I'm most passionate about. It's not just building that intrinsic motivation for one educator. I want that to happen for all educators inside a building or a district or everywhere. And so I have spent a lot of time, and that's what my book is primarily all about, is how do we develop that culture of adult learning? And what I really feel it's based on three main things. First and foremost, we have to develop that process of growth mindset that for an educator to develop, from going from one mindset to another. I hear too much in education, unfortunately, the lazy teachers or the lousy teachers or there's select few over here that will never change. I wholeheartedly believe that those few educators did not come into the profession that way. If we truly believe that, then my next question is, what factors have we put inside professional development that have conditioned them into that mindset? We have to combat that. And so that's where I want to develop the other end of it and have it actually be for everyone. So we have to have a process that allows every educator in the building to develop their own growth mindset, or at least shift from fixed to growth. And the second piece has to be intrinsic motivation. I go to a lot of conferences. I see a lot of examples of people presenting about gamified PD. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I look at it through the lens of, is that an extrinsic motivation, or are we truly intrinsically motivating educators for the sake of desire for further learning? And then the third piece that I feel is often missed is sustainable autonomy. I have too many administrators that say, Jared, we did this ed camp last quarter. Everybody loved it in our district. We did it inside the district. And I say, that's fantastic. Are you going to do it again this month? And they'd stare at me as if like, why would we do that? We did it already last month. Why would we do it again? You can't have autonomy be a one and done deal inside adult professional learning, or expect the autonomy to happen outside the classroom time. So it's really important that we have the growth mindset development, the intrinsic motivation, and the sustainable autonomy, because those three pieces is what allows educators to be empowered to then begin to redefine what professional learning is for them. And they have that built, and then we start to drive that sustained autonomous learning throughout the course of their entire career, not just in spurts throughout.
I love everything you had to say there, Jared. One thing I wanted to just share a little story about a group of teachers I was working with in a 21st Century Learning cadre. We brought them together, about 40 teachers with their administrators, and we had been debating back and forth in our online forums about what does it take to create the change that we feel needs to happen in schools. And it was really all about risk. It was all about, does my administrator have my back? Am I going to be penalized if this doesn't go the way that we hope it goes? What can I expect? So we did kind of an instant debate where we said, okay, and the administrators watched. We wanted the teachers to go to one side of the room if they were on the side of, if you want me to have, if you want me to create change, you've got to have my back. And they went to the other side of the room if they said, I can do this with or without your help. And the administrators seemed really, really surprised at it was split down the middle. So I think that just tells you a little bit about our learners. They're all coming to us, our adult learners are coming to us from different perspectives and points of view and experiences. But it really caused them to think about the importance of modeling risks themselves and letting those teachers know that they had their backs.
I think you make a good point, Nancy, in that we have to really work with administrators as well when we're rolling out training for our teachers and making sure that they not only verbalize the fact that they want their teachers to take risks, but also doing it themselves. And some of the best stories I've heard are when teachers come to me and say, hey, my principal tried this and it didn't work. So now I know if I try to use it in the classroom and they walk in and it's not working, then I know that that's okay, you know, and that's encouraged. So thank you for sharing that. And some great answers.
Okay. Well, I think that building a culture of risk-taking when we train teachers is very difficult for us as trainers. But something that I do, and I think it works, is when I let them know, the teachers, that they can learn alongside with the students. And they realize that we are in a constant learning, in a constant process of learning, and they think that, okay, I know I can do this by myself, but maybe I try it. Maybe when it comes to be with technology, for example, when they want to bring something new to the classroom, they think that the students will know more than them. And I tell them it is okay. We can learn alongside with our learners. So immediately they realize that, well, they can do that. Especially when I work with those teachers, like maybe that they try to have like the teacher-centered approach. It's more difficult, but when I let them know that we still can learn, we can do things with learners at the same time and learn at the same time, they realize that it is okay, especially with technology. I had experience. I have been learning about using different web tools and different things. My students are always teaching me. They say, teacher, you can do this way. It will be easier this way. And it's also when you learn out of your students. So they love it when I tell them that they can learn alongside with learners.
Okay, I guess I'll go ahead and ask. So we've been talking about the positive way to encourage risk-taking, but there's also always going to be those teachers, like Jared was mentioning, that are still hesitant and resistant regardless of what kind of environment, you know, we put them in. So when you do have resistant or hesitant teachers, what are some strategies that you guys have tried? And, you know, how did that work out? Because in my experience, I've had some hesitant teachers and I've tried this strategy or that strategy, it didn't work. So feel free to share positive experiences, but you know, this is a learning place too. So if you've had an experience and you're like, okay, that didn't work, then we can talk through how to make it better for the next time as well. So I'm going to ask the question again since I kept talking. What are your strategies for addressing hesitant or resistant teachers?
Okay. Well, what I tell them is to see challenge as learning opportunities. I always tell them to find the positive side of each situation, fear the unknown, to let them know that they're not alone, that they can ask for help. Something that I also tell them when they are resistant is that we can build partnership, that we can help each other. I always try to find the advantage of each situation, the positive side of each situation. But the thing that I really like to do, the thing that I share is to see challenge as learning opportunities. I always tell them that to find the positive of each situation. Especially here in Colombia, we work, well, sometimes we have teaching context that we have low resources, limited access to books and to technology and to all the things that we need. We can find when we do teacher training, we can find teachers that are always reluctant. They don't want to do that because they said we don't have the materials to try with the activities that you're planning to do, the thing that you are teaching us to do. I work in a teaching context that I don't have access to technology, I don't have resources, but I tell them, well, if we build partnership, if we use what we have, even is limited, especially here in my town. I work in a public school. Public schools in Colombia lack of resources. We don't have access to internet in most of them. It's very limited in the ones that we have access. But I tell them, look around, look what you have. Think that you have, use that. If you have access, for example, if we have computers, but if we don't have internet connection, use the computer. If we have tablet, but we don't have internet connection, use the tablet. So we have been designing our own materials. Then we share what we do. It's because if we don't do that, it will be really difficult for us, especially in our teaching context, that we lack a lot of resources, and we will find a lot of teachers reluctant and resistant to work because they keep complaining that we don't have, but it's very limited. So what I do is to try to find a positive, even if we don't have internet connection, but we have laptops or we have tablets, well, we can design materials to work offline that we don't need to have internet connection. To build partnership, especially to encourage them to use what they have. So that's basically what I do, to encourage them to use what they have and to see the positive side of each situation.
I think it really goes back to building relationships with teachers and going into a partnership with them and taking interest in things that they're interested in. I was a high school math teacher before this, and so when I came into the training situation, math teachers, I will call us out, we are a little hesitant to use technology sometimes. And so if I started a training and it wasn't really going well, or I could tell that I wasn't getting the activity that I wanted out of the room, I threw in that I used to be a math teacher because I used to be one of those grumps in the room too. And it just took somebody taking an interest in what I was doing and being interested in my content and tapping into me wanting to do what's best for my kids. You know, if that is my goal, to do what's best for my students, then that should be enough for me to want to learn new strategies or learn new technology. And so when I'm working with teachers, it's really about this. I'm not trying to make your life more difficult. I'm not trying to make your classroom worse. So let's work together.
So I wrote a few things down, and I promise to connect these points. The number one factor that I see that really cements in reluctant teachers is compliance and negative use of accountability. When we bring into a building, we expect everybody in the building to do this. And then when people aren't doing that, now we have negative uses of accountability that are pushing people up the mountain in a sense. And then compliance as well. Compliance factors that are used as in a punitive way really cements in that reluctant learner kind of mentality. However, there's an analogy that I use in my book, the mountain climbing metaphor, in a sense. And one thing that I really pulled away from Carol Dweck's book, Mindsets, is this idea that when we make someone feel like a failure, they tend to retract from us. And so rather than making people feel like failures over and over and over again, we need to prevent that from happening. That's kind of like, going back to the mountain metaphor, that's like me standing almost at the top of the mountain, and let's say the educator is viewed as being somewhere towards the bottom, and I'm saying to them, why aren't you up here? get up here, come on, get on my level. That is not going to motivate anybody at all. I don't blame them for not wanting to take another step up that mountain when they've been teaching for 15 years or more, and they feel that the strategies that they have used over time really have helped them, and they're trying to work their way up the mountain. But if I make them feel stupid or worthless or not effective, they are not going to take another single step up that mountain. So just like what Sarah was talking about, I need to come back down to them, and I need to have a conversation with them, and I just need to listen. I need to hear what they've been doing, and I need to value what they have done. I need to give value to that 15, 20, 25 years of experience by purely listening to them. And then as I'm listening to them, I'm developing a relationship with them. And then I'm able to say, well, here I am with you. Where's the next point we can go? And how do we get there? If you recognize that your strategies and methods are like this, but you don't feel that this particular area of your instruction is quite as effective, let's focus on that one particular part. And what do you want to do to change it? How do we take it off your plate and replace it with something that you feel is more effective? And then we have that conversation of how we progress forward together. I can't be standing at the top of the mountain pulling them up. I certainly can't be standing behind them pushing them up the mountain. I have to stay with them no matter where they are and just continually probe with questions. You identify the next point, tell me how are we going to get there, and I will help you get there. Is really, I feel, the image in my mind that pops up in trying to establish the relationship, but more importantly, how to get people to continue to move forward rather than keeping them stagnant where they are by creating this toxic environment of making people feel like failures.
There's also, as well as absolutely agree, we have to be the Sherpas for people to carry a bit of the load and carry them with us. There's also a bit about the situation that you're working in. So if you're in a school where people feel under pressure from lots of sides, your mountain is very important to you. How do you make sure it's important to them as well? And I think that's where the personalisation and choice comes back into it. There's also different levels of who you're working with. I've worked in, as we all have, worked in a school where we've been asked to lead something and drive it forward in that school. And we go and we get into people's classrooms and spend time with them. One of my most successful strategies was coffee and cake after school. Just say, right, we're doing a training cafe. I'm not going to tell you the answers, but they might be able to help you. And this person might be like, oh, they're really good at that. I've seen that happen. And act like a bit of a director into things. When you get into a district level, it becomes much more challenging because then you're into lots of different schools, each with a different situation. And working at a national level, even in a country as small as Scotland with 5.5 million people, at national level is a real massive problem. And getting those conversations trickling down, sometimes it just doesn't trickle down, and the rumour mill kicks into place. So challenging the myths that are appearing about things. Oh, that's really difficult. We're not allowed to do that in our school. Oh, I can't spend time doing this because it'll take up too much time. And then the question then becomes, so how can we help you? And the moment you ask that question, Nancy talked about design thinking. I love that how might we question. And that immediately makes it a conversation. How might we help you get this part in place? What's the problem in your classroom? And dig deep into that problem. It may not be about technology. It may be about a relationship within the department. There's all sorts of things that can be happening in there. And the context becomes really, really important at that point.
That's so true, Ian. One of the things that we learned, in addition to all the great things everyone shared already, was that central office people in professional development, outside consultants, we kind of have a stigma and maybe put a little fear in people that they're going to be judged. So we did a program, we called it Creating Innovators, because we started with a book study of Tony Wagner's book. And we paired up people, we asked principals to nominate teachers who were kind of early adopters that would be willing to mentor and peer coach in their building. And so we worked with those mentors separately to help build their skills as coaches. And they handpicked teachers that they thought they could work with, scheduling wise and personality wise, to push them a little bit out of their comfort zone and move them forward, trying technology to support the learning in their schools. And so they each mentored 2 teachers. We kept it small to be manageable. And we just had tremendous results. In fact, many of the people that had been mentored by the time I left the district, they were capable of mentoring others. I'm going to share a link in the chat here. We did a presentation at ISTE a few years back on this whole program, and there is a really amazing video of one of the teachers and just how afraid she really was of using technology and how far she came. It was just amazing.
Thank you for sharing that. I heard a lot of good things about personalizing learning and having peer teaching. That's something that I found, getting that collaboration going is really key. So, and we will give everyone an opportunity to share if they have any resources they want to share in the chat, website, blog, etc. After our last question here. But this has been a great chat already. The last thing that we're going to ask is if everyone could share one strategy that you have implemented or have seen implemented in teacher training that you felt was beneficial and why it was so impactful. So I know that's hard to think of one strategy because I know you have many more than that. But one that you think would be best for our viewers to hear about and why you think it was impactful.
Just for clarification, are you talking about when you are in the moment of facilitating the learning?
Excellent question. So we've heard a lot, which I agree with, about how coaching is more impactful than PD, right? And so when we're talking about training teachers, that strategy can be a coaching strategy or a PD strategy or whatever that happens, whatever, it could be unique. Take that question as you will, so that it'll be the best learning for all of us, whatever you're most passionate about.
Cool. So I'll start this one off if that's okay, because I don't know if it's really a strategy, but I will say when I'm sitting down, and I just had a full day workshop the other day, that when I'm sitting down and I'm planning adult learning, my goal is to have them cognitively operating in the upper levels as much as possible in that time span that I have with them. And that was no different than when I was in the classroom as a middle school and high school English teacher. Was as soon as I started to realize that the reason why there are behavior issues happening in my classroom is because I just spent 45 minutes facilitating learning for students in the lower levels of thinking. I have no one to blame but myself, right? So as soon as I started to focus on the upper levels of thinking and how do I push learners there, that's when technology assisted, because I couldn't do that with a textbook. I couldn't do that with a worksheet or a packet. So that was my goal. And then I just transfer that over in my new role when I work with adults is how can I cognitively get them operating in the upper levels as much as possible, whether we're talking about standards-based education, whether we're talking about authentic intellectual work, like doesn't matter the content. I just got to get them in the upper levels, keep them there as much as possible, and maintain that for the entire duration, because that's when we ultimately have any learner, student or adult, say, wow, it's lunch already? That class went fast, because they were cognitively operating in the upper levels. So I would say that's my main strategy, other than like the other physical things that are happening in the room from time to time, but that's always been my goal in planning.
I'll jump in next. Mine's a tool that I like to use. So I support about 800 teachers and a little over 2,000 then support staff after that. And so for me, it's all about how can I make myself available constantly for them. And not just like over the phone, over email available, but like really come to them available. And so I use a site called You Can Book Me that allows teachers to book individual appointments with me, which is so helpful. And I launched it last year at the beginning of the school year. And now this year, teachers are expecting that. Like they're like, where can I get that link? Or my whole team uses it. So it's small group stuff. It's large, you know, whole faculty, it's individual teachers, it's secretary, it's everybody. Everybody knows that they can book an appointment with me. And it just is, it's a way to make myself available so that, like Nancy said, us in the central office, or, you know, if you're in that position, it takes me out of that position. It puts me in their buildings, at their level, whenever they need it. And it just makes me a little more approachable by making myself 100% available. It doesn't matter what level you're at or where or who you are or what school you're in. I'll come to you and we're going to make it great.
That sounds fantastic, Sarah. I love the idea of they come to you. You don't have to go and push them. That's really good. I want to talk about the informal end of professional development, the unconference model. Teach Meets were founded in Scotland by Ewan McIntosh 12 years ago now. And it's really informally meeting, 7 minutes, 3 minutes, no more than that, no PowerPoints, sharing with your peers what works in your classroom. And occasionally what doesn't work is a really good talk as well. I know in Canada it's become Pub PD, which I really like the sound of as well, I must admit. And it's that informal end where peers get together. There is no facilitator. There is no trainer. It's about people sharing ideas. Sound familiar? Getting ideas from each other. And the Teach Meet model is a really good. The unconference model is really good at allowing an access point to people who are not confident, who are unsure, and they know they're speaking to people about small things. And actually, it's the unexpected conversations which kind of blew me away. Not what I was expecting to learn, but what I was not expecting. Those unknown unknowns that you could go, wow, that's just fantastic. So those informal conversations become even better because they inspire.
I love ed camps. It's the term we use here, and I've been organizing them in Colorado for a while, and especially bringing in all those different voices from different school districts and experiences. Teachers don't feel so alone, and it's about being connected, right? I would say my number one strategy overall is using backwards design for any professional development that's going to happen. And even if it's coaching or blended learning, no matter what the approach, let's first say, what is the problem that we're trying to solve, the instructional or the learning problem? And then do some brainstorming around different strategies with a team of people, because I think that collaboration is essential, and certainly people that you're trying to help solve that instructional problem need to have a voice in how you're going to go about doing it. And then really talk to teachers, get feedback. If you're going to do it more than once, you definitely want to get that feedback and find out what worked and what didn't, and just always continue to try and make it better the next time around.
Well, what I do with teachers is to let them know that they're not alone, that we're always learning. Something that is really important for me, I don't know if it does a strategy, but it's something that it had to work out for me. When I start working on a new group of training, what I do is to value their knowledge, to ask them what they do in their classes. For example, when I start a new training on ICT, well, I always ask them what they already know, the background that they have. I don't want to just go and try to put over them, and I don't want to look like I'm the one that knows everything. So what I do is always have small talk with them before we start. I really value their knowledge, value what they do in their classes. For me, in my case, I have been working with teachers that they're older than me, that they are 50, 55, and I look younger, and it's like, how this woman is gonna tell me what should I do, even if she's younger than me. Especially here in my country, people tend to think like that, like because you are older, you know more. Especially if it's with teacher, they are the ones that, in some cases, they think that they are the one that knows everything. And when it comes to me, like I go to a new session, to a new training session, and I have those 50 years old, 55 years old teachers, and it's like, what I gotta do? They are gonna think that they know everything. So what I do is like, okay, I value what you have. Tell me what you do, and I take into account their background knowledge. That is something that worked for me, and I guess it should work for everybody. I guess if you're a teacher, should be happy to know that the trainer that is coming to the station value your knowledge. So that is something, I don't know if that's a strategy, but that is something that worked for me. Anytime that I start a teaching training, I try to ask them what they already know about that, and in which way they would like to learn, what kind of activities they would like to do. So it makes it helps me a lot to smooth any maybe negative situation during this training.
Can I share one more thing real quick before we wrap up? I think it's really important that in a lot of my conversations around professional development, I feel like the lines between training and learning become pretty blurred. And administrators often use the word learning for training because technically educators are learning something, but they become easily frustrated when the teachers aren't wanting to learn what it is that the administrator is telling them that they should learn. And I believe it was Stacy that mentioned over here in the chat about the idea of when does training become a method of letting people know what they don't know? Well, the problem is if they're not receptive to want to know, then that becomes very problematic. So I'm putting a link in the chat here. It's just a random link, but I'll explain it. And what it does is it goes to the model of learning that I try to promote in terms of the research, integration, reflection, and sharing. We need a holistic process of learning where training can be embedded. So the purpose of training is still in that research phase. If I'm looking to make this part of my instructional practices better, and then I go out and self-research and discover what it is that I didn't know, now I have the intrinsic motivation to go and learn it. I have the intrinsic motivation to come to your training to learn more about that because I've already figured out what my pedagogical weakness is, and I got to turn that into a strength, and your training will help me to turn that into a strength so then I can start using it in my classroom. But that intrinsic motivation's got to be that main factor. So I feel like training is so essential, but we can't make it be the learning process. It has to be embedded inside a bigger learning process. And that's the thing that we need to constantly promote and push out there and talk about and let people know that this half-day training is a small piece of your bigger learning journey, whatever that may be. So.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to thank everyone for sharing their strategies and sharing all that you believe is important and it's worked for you. I heard a lot about relationships. I heard a lot about training and learning as a process, not as a product. That's really the key. And so we are all here today because we still want to continue to learn and be connected. And so I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to certainly encourage you, if you have any links to share before we close down. I know there's going to be, we're on our 1 minute countdown, so we're going to have to close out here. But I just wanted to thank everyone for being a part of this global conversation, and have a wonderful evening. And thank you again to all of you. Any closing words beyond that, Cassie?
Yes, so we have the closing for the whole event. Yay, we made it. And it will be starting in about 5 minutes. actually Tim's jumping on. He's gonna take this over for me. But I just wanted to thank you guys for joining us. And Sandra, do you want to show us your awesome creation, and then we'll take it over to Tim?
Yeah. So you want to see my background wall?
So she made a background, and it has
Yeah. Also, I have something in my shirt.
And her shirt.
Yeah, my shirt. Yeah, but I can. Yeah, that was awesome. I did it.
Amazing.
Yeah, I did it all for the.
That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, I just made it for the session. I love it.